The Thing in the Orchard. The Mason family had always dreamed of living away from the city. So when they found a quaint old farmhouse nestled between an apple orchard and a dense, untouched forest, it felt like a dream come true. Daniel, his wife Claire, and their daughter Sophie moved in right before the apple-picking season, excited to start their life in the countryside. But almost immediately, the locals warned them to be careful at night, especially near the orchard. They spoke in hushed tones, casting nervous glances at the tree line, hinting at an old legend about a creature they called the Orchard Watcher. Daniel brushed it off as small-town folklore, but Claire couldn't shake the unease that lingered in her mind. The first few weeks were calm, with Sophie spending every day exploring the orchard. But one evening, she came back inside, her face pale. "Mom, Dad, I saw someone in the orchard," Sophie whispered, clutching her stuffed rabbit. He was tall and thin, and his face, it was all wrong. Daniel laughed it off, saying she probably saw a shadow or a scarecrow. But Sophie's description stayed with Claire. Tall and thin, with a face that didn't look right. As the days went by, strange things began to happen around the farmhouse. They would find apples on their porch in the morning, arranged in a perfect circle. At night, they heard whispers drifting from the orchard, too faint to understand, but unsettling enough to keep them awake. One stormy evening, Daniel decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight, he stepped into the orchard, determined to prove that it was just local kids playing pranks. Claire watched him disappear into the trees, worry gnawing at her. He returned an hour later, drenched and shaken. "I didn't see anyone, but..." He paused, struggling to find the words. "I felt like something was watching me. And there were footprints. Huge ones, deeper than they should have been in the mud." The next night, the whispers returned, louder this time, almost as if calling to them. Sophie started sleepwalking, her tiny footsteps leading her out toward the orchard until Claire caught her at the doorway and led her back to bed. The whispers grew louder each night, and Claire began to feel an overwhelming presence, something dark and hungry, lurking in the orchard. One night, unable to sleep, Claire looked out her window and saw a figure at the edge of the orchard, staring at the house. He was tall and impossibly thin, with limbs that seemed too long and a face twisted in a grotesque smile. As lightning lit up the night sky, she realized his face wasn't human. It was distorted, with hollow dark eyes and a mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. "Daniel!" she gasped, waking him. But when they looked back out the window, the figure was gone. The next morning, they found claw marks on the outside walls of the farmhouse, deep grooves carved into the wood. Daniel tried to reassure Claire, saying it must have been an animal, but he couldn't hide the fear in his own eyes. That evening, as darkness fell, Sophie went missing. Panic set in as they searched the house and yard, calling her name. Then they heard it, a soft giggling from the orchard, echoing between the trees. Claire's heart pounded as they followed the sound, their flashlights cutting through the fog that had settled over the orchard like a thick blanket. And there, standing among the apple trees, was Sophie, holding hands with the creature. The orchard watcher loomed over her, its head tilted as it looked at them with that twisted, inhuman grin. Its long, bony fingers held Sophie's hand, and its hollow eyes seemed to devour her. "Sophie, come here!" Daniel shouted. But Sophie stood still, her eyes glassy and unblinking. The creature released her, and she stumbled toward her parents, dazed. The orchard watcher remained, its gaze fixed on them as it took a step forward, its limbs bending at impossible angles. Daniel took Sophie in his arms, but the creature advanced, undeterred. With nowhere else to go, they ran back to the farmhouse, slamming the door shut and locking every bolt. But the whispers seeped through the walls, growing louder, filling the house with a voice that was neither human nor animal, a voice that repeated their names. They spent the night huddled in Sophie's room, clutching each other, too afraid to sleep. By dawn, the whispers had stopped, and the orchard was silent. When they finally ventured outside, they found the trees stripped bare of apples, every fruit gone as if devoured in a frenzy. On their doorstep lay a single apple, rotten and black, with bite marks too large to be human. The Masons left Willow Creek that day, abandoning the farmhouse. As they drove away, Sophie looked out the back window and saw it. The orchard watcher, standing at the edge of the orchard, watching them leave, its hollow eyes hungry and unblinking. She didn't dare tell her parents that it had waved goodbye.